Welcome to Inside Politics, our weekly podcast on a small handful of things you need to know about San Antonio politics. I'm Greg Jefferson, politics editor of the San Antonio Express-News. I'm joined by Eric Cooper, the president and CEO of San Antonio Food Bank. Welcome.
Greg, thank you.
How's it going?
And really, thank you for everything the Express-News does for our community. I mean, you keep us informed. I truly believe the San Antonio Food Bank would not be where we are as an organization without your incredible reporting and the journalism that happens here. So just thank you for telling stories.
Well, two things. You're making me blush, and that ends today. All of that. All right. all the good stuff. All the good stuff ends on this show. That's anyway. So, welcome. I wanted to have you on because I wanted to talk with you about the issue of affordability. Right, it is pervasive, and it's in just about every national. It will be in every national political race, a lot of local races, and a lot of state races. Now, I wanted to start with the crisis the food bank found itself in 3 months ago, when we had the longest ever government shutdown. So San Antonio is a company town in a lot of respects, and that company being the federal government. So when the government shutdown creates huge problems, describe that, what was it, 43-day period?
Yeah.
What did the food bank, did you have time to prepare, and what was the impact?
Well, I think I tend to use the phrase, the San Antonio Food Bank, we fight the daily disaster of poverty. Right. But when a natural disaster occurs, we respond to that too. We run towards the fire, if you will. These man-made disasters, I think in some ways, the challenge of the government shutdowns have been how long? Right. What's the duration? Is this going to be a day, a week, a month? And then, how do you prepare? And I think the reality is, like a natural disaster, when the storm clouds are forming and you need to maybe start to think about evacuating, people stock up. They want to weather the storm. And I think when the announcement of the government shutdown occurred, you had all of these federal workers. Now, San Antonio, as you said, military city USA, we have 189,000, federal employees. We have amazing federal agencies that are represented in so many different organizations. So those employees, knowing their lifestyle, their household runs paycheck to paycheck, and if they were to have a disruption in not getting their paycheck, they're not going to be able to pay their utility bill. They're not going to make their mortgage. They're not going to be able to pay rent. They're not going to be able to put food on the table. And so that wave of demand started to come in addition to the demand that we normally see. And we're still in the long-term recovery of the Hill Country floods. So, all of those families still need assistance. And so having enough resources to meet those demands was challenging. We distributed a lot of our inventory. And then, after the government shutdown, we've been working to kind of, stock back up so that we're able to kind of meet the challenges of the moment.
What was the spike like? How big was it?
We went from feeding, roughly 105 to 110,000 all the way up to close to 170,000 people in a 7-day period in a week. Right.
And was that because of the problems with people being able to access SNAP, or was this some other problem?
It was both. I think, October 1, within the first few days of the month, we started to see the federal workforce. And then it wasn't until kind of mid-month that there was a communication from the Health and Human Services Commission to SNAP recipients that, hey, should this government shutdown continue, you may see a disruption in your November 1 SNAP benefits. And as soon as that communication went out, I think most people need to understand that the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, is a supplement. It doesn't cover someone's full month's worth of nutrition. And so generally it runs out, mid-month. And so, for families that had no dollars on their EBT card to be told, hey, you might not get reloaded, they started to come to the food bank. And so it was a combination of both the federal workforce, government contractors that were furloughed, and then SNAP recipients. And that number for just Bexar County is about 300,000 individuals. And so, boy, it was a scary time just because I was worried that we would literally run out of food. I mean,
did you come close?
We did. I mean, I know, many of the listeners are volunteers at the food bank, and people would say, I've never seen it so empty. Like you could see the back walls through the racking, which usually had pallets of food. And, the generosity of the community started to come in, and we were able to purchase, which is something, it gets a little complicated. I think most people know the food bank, that we squeeze the buffalo off the nickel. We want to be the most efficient nonprofit. We have a strong ROI. And the value equation of the food bank is when you give me a donation of $1, I'm trying to find where food is potentially going to go to waste. And I put the expense towards procuring that donated pound of food from a farmer, grower, food manufacturer, retailer, wherever it is, to get that to someone in need. But if I can't get it donated, if it's not available in the moment, I still need food.
Right.
So now I'm purchasing wholesale at the best possible cost food to meet that need. So we're less efficient buying food, and we were spending several $1 million having to buy food to meet that immediate need so that no one would go hungry. Right. But that wouldn't have happened without San Antonio stepping up, and individuals, companies, foundations all started to rally around the need, and it was incredible. You all, again, I guess I'm not supposed to talk good about the Express News, but you guys told our story, and people, I'm
going to blush again, but it's fine. Go ahead.
People responded. Yeah, I think it's incredible. I mean, our city, lots of metaphors of punching above our weight or whatever. We're just a big city with a small town feel, but man, we show up for our neighbors, and we see that. Like it was incredible to see the outpouring of financial support, people trying to drop off food to help their neighbors, and then volunteers. And one of the humbling profiles of volunteers was that displaced federal workforce, right? They were like, hey, I'm with the Department of Defense, and they told me I can't go to work, so I'm coming here because I know coworkers that will need help. And I want to be there for them. My husband and I were fine. Our kids are gone, and we're okay financially. But there's a lot of my coworkers that don't know how they're going to stay.
So you saw a wave of it's not surprising. You have a federal government shutdown. You're going to see a wave of federal government workers. But I'm curious about. In past shutdowns, did you see as many people coming out, or are a lot of families, including those in the federal workforce, just kind of living closer to the bone now? Like they just don't have the margin that they had before, and they're showing up now, whereas before maybe they weren't during previous shutdowns. Was that the case?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, this is according to Eric Cooper, but I do think that.
Well, he's on. So
yeah. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah. I think we started to see a lot of that during COVID, and what changed was the equity out of people's retirements, savings accounts. They've extended credit card debt. No one wants to ask for help, and they're trying to muscle it out on their own. And that's the robbing of that equity. It's the depleting of, hey, I'm going to lean on my supply. And then finally they're like, yeah, I mean, I've maxed out my credit cards. I better come ask for help. And I do think that has just continued, it's been hard to catch up with inflation and all the expense categories that just took double-digit percentage increases. How do you save? And so for so many families, it is hand to mouth. It is and we say it all the time, paycheck to paycheck, but really think about it. It is the paycheck runs out just as the next paycheck is coming in.
Right.
And so
you're not saving.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, your account is going to zero as it's getting refilled. And that vulnerability is what we see all the time. So no, it doesn't. We just count on it that there's no difference from a federal worker to a private corporate employee. It's when disaster strikes, it can be humbling.
So it sounds like the flow of people coming to the food bank. What you're saying implies that it's been going up. Because things haven't been getting cheaper, because of inflation, prices have been going up, and it's just harder to make ends meet. And maybe that wasn't so much the case in 2019 before the pandemic. So how many people were you seeing back, 7 years ago as opposed to now?
Yeah. So you're hitting the issue, and that is, pre-pandemic, we saw 60, 70, sometimes 80,000 people a week. The pandemic took it to the level that we're at, 120,000 people. It got as high as maybe 150,000, in some of those peak times. But then, 120, so doubled. The demand doubled. And then, vaccines started to come out, the economy started to open up, people were going back to work, and we started to drop. We got down as low as 90,000, but then as inflation and costs started to rise, it got up to about 105,000. And, in the last year or so, we've been hovering at this 120,000 people a week. So we're at pandemic level demand today. Today. And I think that's a story of where, inflation and the cost of living, is just not, allowing people to put food on the table. Yeah.
Now, the San Antonio Food Bank always struck me as, kind of a barometer for where the broader economy is. You're looking at, how are people doing on the margins, right? And if things are starting to go south for them and more, that says bad things for the economy. Is that overly simplistic, or is that kind of?
No. I giggle a little bit because I know, obviously with elections coming and, any elected official is going to debate the success of the economy.
Right.
But you just need to show up at the food bank and you'll understand what's happening. And so when people are like, hey, we're thriving and all is good, I'm like, no, not quite. And there is some, some nuances to that demand. I mean, we're obviously feeding people every day, but how many people are in our lobby? How many people are coming for SNAP assistance? What's happening? What's trending? Is what we're trying to understand, and so that we're better prepared to meet that need. And the economy has not done the food bank any favors in the last few years.
Well, tell me what you make, just given kind of where your operations are at now. Tell me about the economy.
Well, it's definitely not working for everybody. I think there's so many people that are being left behind. I think one of our fastest growing segments is people that are retiring financially insecure, and therefore they're food insecure. The inadequacies of Social Security and the healthcare costs being what they are, create a dependency for seniors on the food bank. And I literally got a call from the Social Security Administration saying, would you guys want to, figure out like how to co-office here? Because we need to introduce more people to you. Like, hey, here's what your Social Security amount's going to be. And you need to know the food bank.
Are you doing that? Are you setting up a little office? Social Security?
We have a direct connect now to our helpline as the reality of what that Social Security support would look like for a senior, so that we can help the senior understand what other programs they might be eligible for. And it's just humbling. So that segment of the population is growing. And I think it directly connects back to what we were talking about earlier, in that, because you're living paycheck to paycheck, there's no pensions anymore. It's, 401ks, and it requires saving. And if you're not able to have margin in your paycheck to put it away, you can't retire financially secure and not know hunger. So I think, sure, there's lots of judgment there that, hey, you should have saved, and you had 35, 40 years,
Well, I'm curious about that because, those who are retiring now, like a lot of them, most of them grew up with the idea of you have the deserving poor, right? And you have the undeserving poor. And the deserving poor are the ones who are trying to make it work, and they just need a little help. The undeserving poor, they're lazy, and they just don't. Does that mindset make it? Do you have to go looking for them? How hard is it for them to say, okay, I need to go to the food bank?
Yeah.
Like, do they need to be approached?
No, you're saying so much there, because it's like, there's a level of stigma that I think asking for help equals failure. Right. And I think for that population, seniors, they're rugged individuals that value independence, value self-reliance, and they don't want to ask for help, and they would much rather go without. And so it does take a conversation. It just reminds me of a referral we got from a elderly gentleman that was a veteran and was getting medical care at the VA. And I guess my understanding is that he was not getting better, and the doctor was just, trying to figure out like what the regiment was not delivering for him. And so the doctor, I guess, asked, are you eating? And
it seemed kind of basic.
And he said, well, at the apartments that I live at, in the leasing office, they have free coffee. And so he's like, and he's like, I drink a lot of coffee but I don't have a lot of food. So he's like, I'm going to write you a script to go to the food bank. You need to go there. And so I met this gentleman in our lobby with this note from his doctor, and that made it easier for him to get the help, because I'm here because my doctor told me to come, not connecting, I really need help, right? I don't have food and all I have is coffee, right? So I think it's humbling. And that's what I want anyone that's going through a season of struggle to know that we care about them, that we love them. And it truly is without judgment. It doesn't matter how you got here. You're hungry.
Right.
You don't have food. Yeah. So we all screw up. Right. And I think that conversation about worthy or unworthy poor, or, it was their decisions or their poor planning, or we see everything. We see the unemployed, the underemployed. We see a whole lot more underemployed. This is maybe a little bit of a tangent, but I've been doing this 32 years. And so in the early 90s, when welfare programs were debated and President Clinton, brought welfare reform, and it was interesting, right? It was a time when Democrats were like, if you get a benefit, you should work, which is more of a Republican, well,
that was the era of big government is dead. And part of that is work requirements for welfare.
Yeah. And so, I think a lot of those strategies, got people help. But I think what I believe was missed was, we didn't address wage. It was like, hey, if you're going to get this public assistance, you need to be working. Right. But ironically, because you're working at this low wage, you're eligible for public assistance. Right. And I think if we would address the minimum wage, then you could actually move people off of public assistance, right? And I think that is the opportunity that we have. I think it has to be combined with some strategy to manage expenses. And this is where, again, I've been an advocate for living wage and trying to get wages up. And weirdly, during the pandemic, I think I was like, man, wages are coming up, right? Right. And it was this, debate like, hey, people have been on the couch too long. Nobody wants to work anymore. And so business can't open up. They don't have the employees. So, competition for labor, wages start to go up. And, for an advocate of that and the belief that, man, if we could get wages up, I could shorten my line. I could reduce the demand if people got paid. Because I do believe that hunger isn't a food issue, it's an income issue. And, but because expenses outpace the increases, my line got longer.
So, you arrived in San Antonio, 25 years ago?
That's right.
So what, 2000?
2001.
All right. Yeah, me too. Yeah, we got here about the same time. Now, when you got here and you settled in and you looked around, San Antonio was and remains one of the poorest large cities in the country. Yeah. It was probably a little worse off 25 years ago, but it's not that much better now. Yeah. What was your kind of initial take, your first analysis on why San Antonio was where it's at, why it was as poor as it was at that time?
Well, again, I was young back then, and much more naive.
Right.
And I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and sadly, I probably assumed and thought that it was our proximity to Mexico. And that
lower wage,
jobs, hardworking workforce, humble,
big hospitality industry,
doesn't take much, don't complain much, but and it was this, the San Antonio Food Bank serves, 29 counties, and many of our southern counties, there's poverty rates that are at 50% of the population. And so there's some, Zavala County had the highest rate of childhood hunger than any county in the United States. And so, I think coming here, I knew there was real challenges and, the inequity between haves and have-nots, because I think that's what for a resident, probably most people don't feel it or see it or until you see it on paper and you're like, wow, that's us. I mean, we have to own that. And I think it motivated me to want to do more. And I think we have continued to work to grow our outputs and our impact. But the demand has just continued to grow with us.
Right.
And
I mean, when I got here and had a chance to look around, I thought, this is obvious. I totally know what the problem is here. Educational attainment. Right. Which has improved steadily. And in some cases, depending on what you're talking about, fairly dramatically. Right. And I think it's the same thing as you've seen or you saw with wages in the pandemic. It's like wages are going up and education attainment is going up. It's improving. And yet San Antonio remains poor. Now, that being the case, and inflation, it sucks and it really hurts. But I think there's probably more to it than that. What other factor is missing there? So you got education, wage. What else?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we think of hunger as food insecurity, not knowing where your next meal is coming from. And so what does it mean to be food secure? When you think of food security, it really is more holistic than just poverty and income. It's things like the food system and the environment, soil, water, that if we're not thinking about responsible agriculture and food production, we could all be hungry. So I think with that kind of deliberate thinking, the big pillars of a secure community, to me, not just include food, but housing. And so what would it mean to be housing secure, knowing that you would have access to housing? Affordability in the housing space has driven unaffordability in the housing space has driven people into the food bank. I always say rent eats first, right? And so because rent has gone up so much, it has taken the biggest chunk of a household paycheck and not left enough for food. Education, I think, is the key. And what would it mean to be secure in your education, knowing that you would be able to have access to learning, that with that learning, it could increase your knowledge along with your pay. And then employment. I mean, I think, wow, the concept of being secure in your employment where, for so many that are working, independent contractor, part-time, zero benefits, hourly wage, where you're having to stack jobs to get the dollars that you need to make rent. all those issues. I always think of, the pandemic taught us that, hey, if you're sniffling, if you've got a little bit of a cold, don't come to work, right? You don't want to get your coworkers sick, test. Right. And, but, for our neighbor, that 120,000 people we feed a week, the most common profile is female. Female, is definitely disproportionately hungry. She's working. She's a parent, and she's a Latina. Latinas are the lowest paid workers in the workforce. And she's always gone to work sick. If she didn't go, her babies wouldn't eat. And so, during the pandemic, she's told, hey, stay home. But today it's kind of don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
There's no provisions for that profile of worker to have sick leave or personal time off, or the benefits that are critical to go along with income at a job that we all need to survive. And so I think those inadequacies in the workforce, boy, if we could be secure in our employment, have a secure workforce, all of that, food, housing, education, and employment, I think are the four big areas. Transportation, childcare, access to good, affordable healthcare, are all critical, I think, if our population's going to thrive. But boy, those big four, I think we've got to be thinking about how we could have good, effective policy and strategy to move more of our residents forward.
Do you think of the food bank as solely a safety net program, or do you see it as kind of an engine that could, for change? Like this is one way of addressing and fighting poverty in the region.
Yeah,
and I guess that would be through partnerships, but I mean,
yeah, no. I think, you're triggering for me. I think I believe that I'm not going to solve hunger with a canned good, right? It really is building a community of conscience. I don't want to beat up higher ed, but I'd rather see less social workers graduating than I want to see more MBAs of conscience, right? We need business leaders that want to take care of their employees so that the food bank doesn't have to, right? And I think we have been given opportunity to be a voice, to be an influence. And I think as an organization, we're trying to use that influence in a more holistic way, and partner and talk about issues that are bigger than just what's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but really try to bring an awareness and a conscience to our community.
Right.
A city of compassion that really cares about people. And I think if people step up, magic can happen.
Right. Now, we started out talking about the very long government shutdown that kind of marred the fall, right? We had a very short shutdown, lasted about 4 days. Any ripple effects on the food bank? Did you see? I mean, it was so short, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, no. I think we have our readiness strategies, and it's red alert, and we're in code orange or whatever, and thankfully we learned many of the nutrition title programs were not threatened, and so I think that was some peace and security for us, but we were ready should there be a need, but we didn't see anything.
So you'd mentioned at a point or two during the fall government shutdown, you thought you might run out of food.
Yeah.
You might remember this famous Express News photograph of there it is during early in the pandemic. All of these vehicles have people in them who want food, and I believe they all got food that day. Right? Did you ever run out of food during the pandemic? And I'm sure you're there somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. This. Well, again, just a shout out to William Luther and his capturing Tom Osborne for just telling the story of what was happening. And this photo was taken. It was then highlighted on the New York Times. I got a call from Dr. Phil. I was in 72 different countries sharing the story of this photo and what it was going to be about. And I think people were trying to get their head around, the pandemic, it's hitting, what's happening, and to be able to talk about basic needs and supply chain challenges. We came really close. It probably was the most critical level of inventory shorts in our warehouse that I've ever seen was the pandemic. And because we had the demand spike so much, going from that 60,000 to the roughly 150 at its peak, that we just couldn't keep up. And that pressure was enormous. And to really understand it is like, hey, every day I've got, 16 drivers that wake up at dark 30, show up at the food bank, get in their trucks, and we pick up from Walmart and H-E-B and Target and Costco and Sam's Club and Whole Foods and all the great grocery retailers. And we're picking up bread and dairy and deli and produce and meat items and all the fresh stuff that, because of their commitment to customers, they want it as fresh as possible. And this is food that's edible. It's just a day-old loaf of bread, right? And the challenge that we had was all my trucks were going out and they were coming back pretty empty,
right? Because
the grocery stores were empty. They were selling out, right? You could, and I literally had this happen where I was trying to shop and I was at H-E-B and I pulled onto the bread aisle and there was one loaf of bread and there was a guy in a shopping cart at one end of the aisle and I'm on the other. And we both started to move. And then I was like, man, he's going to see I'm with the food bank.
you better give it up.
So I'm like, yeah, you go right ahead. This would not be a good look for Eric Cooper to take the last loaf of bread.
Dirtbag.
Yeah, that CEO at the food bank caused my family to go hungry. So like it was just, we couldn't get access to food. And so we ended up getting this tremendous support. And I remember our food purchasing team, they spent $35 million, I think, in about 24 hours that we were buying food. And all those truckloads of food started to come in and they were gone in about 30 days. And so I think that's the awareness I think listeners need to understand is, your San Antonio food bank, I hope to distribute this year about 95 million pounds of food. And that's, about $190 million worth of food. Right. So when you think about $190 million in a 12-month period, every week is $4 to $5 million that I've got to, in food that I've got to bring in and distribute. And if I could use my cash to get donated food, that's where I'm efficient. But when I'm buying food, we hemorrhage in food and dollars pretty quickly when disasters like that hit.
And that photo, like you said, it resonated. It showed up in the New York Times, CNN, CBS. It was all over the place. And I think there were several reasons for it. One is like it just showed you how bad the economic impact, how bad everybody was hurting from the shutdowns and the job loss early in the pandemic. But I think it also showed, there were a lot of people who were on pretty thin ice before the pandemic. Right. And I think that was shocking to a lot of people, unless you were one of those who didn't have much savings to fall back on. I'm going to guess that didn't surprise you. Like that wasn't the thing that shocked you about that photo. Yeah, no, I mean, it is. It's like you see the demand, people, it's just a very tight margin. And I think that, in the food bank space, we think about like, is it an emergency need? And typically, it was 4 times a year. It's, hey, the margins are thin, but I can make it. But if my car breaks down, the holiday expenses are tough, back to school is tough, summertime, those utility bills can spike. And, if there's a expense that I can't plan for, then I'm going to come to the food bank. And the incredible thing about food is it then frees up those, we're a food bank. Right. People really need money to pay those bills. But I'm like, look, if I could just get you $100 worth of groceries, then maybe you can take what money you can to pay your utilities or stay housed. And so that cost shifting, and I think we saw that all the time, but now someone doesn't have their own ability to have their own earned income, right? It's rare that we are 100% of someone's food needs. Right. We just don't have the food. When people think about SNAP, for every one meal I provide someone that's hungry, SNAP provides 9. But their own income provides an estimation of a SNAP recipient, 10 to 12. So it is their own income first, SNAP second, and then the charitable food system. I'm just kind of rounding it out to make sure. And boy, when situations like that happen, when no one's getting income, you're going to see 2 things happen. I've got to grow, but the SNAP program has to grow. And that's what happened. And I think, as a safety net program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, their roles grew during the pandemic to meet that nutritional need and demand, and then started to come back down, as you would expect, as the economy opened up. And that's a true safety net. That's a resource that's available, and it was sure needed during that time. Right. Now, you'd noted that in 2019, dramatically fewer people you were seeing every week compared to now. And the pandemic was obviously a big turning point for you. But at what point did it dawn on you that, as an organization, we need to get bigger? Because this is not, this is not going to go away entirely. Like this isn't going to settle back into 2019 numbers. Right. I think it's a great question. I think the profile of the food bank and people's understanding, I think about the basics. It's food, right? Brought some incredibly generous donors and support that was unprecedented for us, that we had never gotten that kind of support. And so as a steward of that support, I was like, I got to meet the need now. So we're going to be buying food,
but we're also going to be growing our procurement strategy of donated food. So we're adding trucks, we're adding drivers, we're going to get more opportunities to work with farmers and growers to get those surplus crops that maybe were being left in the field off of the field. And maybe there's some grocery stores that we haven't been able to pick up because we don't have the driver capacity, because I could see that the demand wasn't shrinking, that we needed to think differently. And we need to align with partners. And so, we frame our work into 3 areas, which we call food for today, food for tomorrow, and food for a lifetime. Our food for today work is that addressing the immediate need of hunger and getting people groceries and meals. But our food for tomorrow work is about helping families navigate public assistance for SNAP and WIC and Medicaid and TANF and long-term care for seniors. In some communities, access to utility assistance programs. But then our food for a lifetime work is really about workforce development, job training, job placement, nutrition education, just trying to move people forward. And, I think in partnership with the city of San Antonio and SA Ready to Work, we started to grow how we connected people to employment and job training. We have new partners in those areas of housing and education and employment. And when I think employment, it's really childcare. I think the pandemic, right? We saw how, schools, when they close, it's tough for parents to go to work, right? And the affordability of childcare. So, we knew we needed to invest more into partnerships and strategies and grow as an organization. And, I think there's a lot of things working, but boy, we've got a long way to go. I think there's still food that goes to waste every day that we want to get to. And having the resources enough to get that is a daily challenge of telling the story of the food bank and trying to attract the level of support. We have to eat every day, right? And so, it is it's intuitive, but you're like, man, look, okay, I filled the food bank. The food bank's full. I can't rest. You're going to see me tomorrow because that food's going to be distributed. Once the food's distributed, it's eaten and it's gone. So I've got to continue to replenish, and that work will always continue as long as there's hunger.
So I would say last question. It's never quite the last. We'll say last set of questions, right? So, so if you can, if the food bank does tell you something about where the economy is at, as CEO of this enterprise, you have to be looking ahead, right? What are you planning for? What do you anticipate this year in terms of the economy? Are you planning for any jolts, recession? What's in your head?
Yeah. The pie tin, if you will, that I pay attention to is the 3 slices is really the corporate community business, right? The private industry that provides for all of us, if that's the economy. But the public slice is a big slice. And then my little slice that I'm trying to, the nonprofit or non-government organization, and that fills the tin, right? And I think what we've seen in this last year is that, the government is saying, hey, we're going to go through budget reconciliation and cut, and we're going to shrink our slice of this pie. And interestingly enough, in my mind, right, some of that shrinking of their budget is a strategy to maybe give tax relief to the corporate community. And so I think I'm going to encourage them to use that windfall to grow their slice of the pie to try to meet the demands that our society and the community has. Because it's
higher wages.
Yeah, it's not realistic.
Bigger checks to the food bank, I would guess. Right.
Yeah, and look, cut to the chase. Don't give it to the food bank. Give it to your employees, right? Like that. Like save all the hassle and energy.
Better healthcare benefits. Yeah, higher pay.
Absolutely. That I think, in answering your question, what I'm worried about is the retreat of some of those public resources that are critical to meet the needs. And so, look, lots of debate around healthcare and the exchange and access and affordability. And people are going to come to the food bank because their health insurance went up, right? And so, anything that can be done to make healthcare more affordable will lessen my demand. And so watching what's happening in the public sector and the decisions our elected officials are making is probably the number one challenge. And then, how are the leaders within the nation, the state, and our community thinking about economic development and opportunity for the workforce, and how can we have jobs for those that are working to climb the ladder. As you mentioned, we're getting better education attainment, but we're just not getting the attainment of the wage or the jobs that would allow someone to thrive.
Right. Now, let's end on a cheery note.
Okay.
And I'm not the cheery note guy, so
I gotta carry us. All right.
Okay. Say something cheery. What cheery thing do you want to say?
Well, just that I believe in people, and I think the food bank has two sides. The side that we've talked a lot about, where people are getting help, but the other side is where people give help, and so I see people giving food, time, through volunteerism, dollars, and lending their voice like you all are doing. And I think in that I'm inspired. I see the kid that, is turning 8 years old and having his birthday party at the food bank and saying, hey, I don't need presents, bring canned goods. So neighbors that are hungry get food. And so I'm optimistic about our future. I just wish we would focus on our commonalities and the full appreciation of difference and how that makes our city and state and country great versus, making those differences partisan and breaking us down. We've got a lot of challenges, and we need to be working together. The enemy is not us. The enemy are things like hunger, poverty. And if we could unite, I'm optimistic that every resident of our country could thrive. And that's the day I'm working for.
All right. Great place to stop. Thank you very much, Eric Cooper. Really appreciate you stopping by. Thanks for watching. We will catch you next week. If you've not signed up for the ENside Politics newsletter, drop down the show notes, click on the thing, and sign up. And we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.